everyone was told, from Rupert Murdoch, from Fox, to every studio, look, if you touch this thing, you will be out, you will be done. You'll be finished in 3 years.
You just heard a Hollywood blacklist threat. You just heard a federal agent describe America as the world's top consumer of child exploitation material. And you just heard a sitting member of Congress read coded emails from Jeffrey Epstein's files out loud on the congressional record and say she doesn't know what jerky means in that context. But nobody talks like that.
I looked directly at the emails that have been widely circulated pertaining to the age 11, and I have it written down on my notes, the permission to kill email, the Snow White, the littlest girl was naughty, etc. And some of them pertaining to, jerky, whatever that is. Yeah.
And so, and so just quick follow-up, what is jerky? Like, what is that exactly?
I think that's the question. I don't know if it's like, and again, like going into specifically just based on what this is, I don't know.
Code
the
word.
Context
It
is
has to be a code word. Nobody talks about jerky like this.
These aren't conspiracy forums. These aren't anonymous sources. These are documented, recorded, verifiable statements. But here's what nobody is connecting. The same network that buried a film about rescuing children. The same name that appears in Epstein's documents 5 separate times. The same woman who put a convicted music predator in front of millions of viewers and called him a healer. These aren't separate stories, they're one story. And it starts with a man who got struck by lightning literally and still didn't stop.
I went through hypothermia. I had to have open heart surgery. I was electrocuted, struck by lightning. I understand the necessity of what I was going to have to go through could help bring people back to God.
Jim Caviezel is not the kind of person who walks away from things. When Mel Gibson cast him as Jesus Christ in The Passion of the Christ, Caviezel didn't research the role from a trailer. He endured hypothermia on set. He had open heart surgery mid-production, and in one of the most documented freak accidents in music Hollywood history, he was struck by lightning while hanging on the cross. Literally struck by lightning. I went through hypothermia. I had to have open heart surgery. I was electrocuted. Struck by lightning. I understand that the necessity of what I was going to have to go through could help bring people back to God. That film made over $600 million. It opened every door in Hollywood for Caviezel. And then he made a choice that closed all of them. He said yes to Sound of Freedom. The film is based on the real story of Tim Ballard, a 12-year veteran of Homeland Security investigations who worked child sex crimes and who ran undercover operations across South America, the Caribbean, and West Africa, who looked at material most human beings couldn't endure for 12 minutes and did it for over a decade. When Ballard finally quit his government career and founded his own rescue operation, the film that told that story was already complete, already in the can, already ready for distribution. And nothing happened. Major studios sat on it, not for months, for 5 years. And they've done everything they can to stop it, as they did this with The Passion of the Christ. Think about what that means structurally. A film about rescuing children from sex trafficking networks. A film based on a real federal agent. A film with documented verifiable operations at its foundation and the institutional response from the most powerful entertainment companies on earth was buried. Caviezel was explicit in interviews about who was involved in that resistance. Not vague shadow figures. Powerful named people with the kind of media reach that can make a story disappear before it starts. People in Oprah Winfrey and Tyler Perry's orbit. People connected to every major distribution network in the country. When Sound of Freedom finally reached theaters independently through Angel Studios without a single major studio behind it, something happened that nobody in the industry expected. But people showed up. We're selling out right now. Our biggest war right now is to get more theaters. The biggest studios control those. 200 million. No major studio, no studio marketing machine, no late-night show appearances, no morning show softballs. The public found a film that the industry tried music to make invisible and turned it into one of the biggest independent releases in American history. But the most important thing that happened didn't happen at the box office. It happened at a screening early, well, before wide release, and it changed everything for Caviezel. Caviezel was in the room for an early screening of Sound of Freedom, watching the audience, reading the energy, and then something happened. Not once, not twice, but 3 times at the exact same moment in the film. There was talking going on, and I was like watching the audience going. Second time it happened again. Third time talking in this one particular spot, and I'm thinking, what did we do something wrong or something? But so then one more time it happened at the end. Music. I was asking about the movie. Andy asked him about that one particular part where everybody's talking and they all cried out Epstein Island, and I went, oh, okay. Now I understand what we're up against. The audience wasn't confused. They weren't music distracted. They were watching a film about child trafficking rings operating on private islands. And without prompting, they made the connection to the most documented real-world example in modern history, Jeffrey Epstein's Island, little st. James. And they weren't wrong to make it because Tim Ballard wasn't working in a vacuum. He spent 12 years as a federal agent watching the architecture of these networks, how they move children, how they hide transactions, and how they use islands and private estates and luxury travel to create geography that insulates the people at the top from the operations at the bottom. There's close to 6 million children or more who are forced into sex slavery, labor slavery, or organ harvesting. And I can attest that I have been involved in cases involving all 3 of those forms of slavery multiple times. 6 million children, not a conspiracy theory number. A Department of Labor and United Nations sourced figure. And when Caviezel describes the architecture that makes that number possible, he doesn't reach for a simple metaphor. He reaches for a biological one, that it's an 8-armed octopus. And if you take just out it, that arm will grow back. You have to take the head. One arm goes down, another grows. The machine protects itself, not through conspiracy in the cinematic sense, through complicity, through proximity, through the kind of social architecture that makes a predator look safe because the right person is standing next to him. Which brings us to the files. In 2024 and into 2025, the Epstein court documents began to unseal. Not in the way the public might have hoped, not a single dramatic release, but gradually in chunks, in waves of names and dates and emails and flight logs that landed in legal databases and spread across the internet faster than any legal team could contain. What came out of those documents wasn't just names. It was patterns. Start with the communication methods. Investigators and journalists flagged a recurring system in Music Epstein's correspondence, a method designed specifically to evade electronic surveillance. Not encrypted messages, not deleted texts. Something simpler and more untraceable. They don't hit send, but they have the password for multiple emails, and they'll just go in, get the message, and then never open or close it. So, it's impossible basically to track. It's just like a draft. Shared accounts, draft folders, messages that exist but are never sent, never transmitted, just sitting in an inbox for whoever has the password to read and close. No record of exchange, no metadata trail, no timestamps of transmission. A system designed so that the communication exists, but legally there is no communication. And then there's the language inside those communications. Researchers, journalists, and now members of Congress have flagged repeated use of terminology in Epstein's correspondence that mirrors patterns identified in FBI databases of coded language used in trafficking music networks. Words that appear in contextually impossible ways. Words like jerky. I looked directly at the emails music that have been widely circulated pertaining to the age 11 and I have it written down on my notes music of the permission to kill email. Yeah, the Snow White the littlest girl was naughty etc. And some of them pertaining to music jerky whatever that is. Yeah, and so just quick follow what is jerky? Like what is that exactly? I think that's the question. And I don't know if it's like going into specifically music just based on what this is. I don't know the context is really nobody talks about jerky like this. Weird. Yeah, it's a code word and it's weird. This is not a fringe commentator reading into ambiguous language. This is a sitting United States Congresswoman on the congressional record reviewing unredacted files. Alright, and saying out loud that she does not know what these emails mean, but she knows they don't mean what they say. And the emails referencing age 11. The permission to kill email, the Snow White references. These are not isolated anomalies. These are a pattern that repeats across the documents. Now, let's talk about the border because this is where the abstract becomes music visceral. In the last 2 years, approximately 85,000 unaccompanied minors crossed the southern border of the United States. No verified sponsors, no background checks, no DNA confirmation. Children, some of them under 5 years old, processed and released into a country with no confirmed safe destination. When 85,000 children crossed the border this last year and music disappeared, where did they disappear to? Where did they go? The Joe Rogan podcast team investigated this. They found a U.S. Marshals report. 72 missing children rescued across Indiana and Iowa, Ohio, and Georgia in just a few weeks. 72 missing children rescued. Yes, and it was a blip in the news. Like meanwhile, I saw 1,000 articles on how mean Ellen is. 72 children rescued by federal marshals. And it registered as a blip. Tim Ballard was asked about the media silence by Jordan Peterson. His answer had 2 parts, 2 readings, one charitable, one not. And that not charitable reading people with the power to suppress stories who are suppressing stories because they are involved is exactly seconds what Jim Caviezel has been saying for years about one specific name. Oprah Winfrey's name appears in the Epstein music documents 5 times. Her defenders, and she has many, will say that appearing in documents is not guilt, that proximity is not participation, that a name in a file is not a conviction. And legally, they're right. But Jim Caviezel isn't making a legal argument. He's mapping a pattern. And when you lay that pattern out in sequence, something becomes very difficult to explain music away. Let's start with Harvey Weinstein. Weinstein is now serving 16 years in federal prison. Before his exposure, he was Hollywood royalty. And Oprah Winfrey was his companion at industry events for decades, photographed with him, attending his parties, giving him access to the most exclusive social circles in entertainment. But the issue isn't the friendship itself. The issue is the mechanism it created. She met Harvey with Oprah. So Katie, and she talks about this interview, and before the trial, during the trial, we'll play the whole interview. She talks about the fact that if Oprah's with Harvey, then why should I worry? I second mean. Oprah is the world's mom, who is not going to trust the person who's next to Oprah. The world's mom. That phrase sits in the middle of this entire story like a stone. Because the power Oprah has built over 40 years is fundamentally a trust apparatus. She decides who is safe. She decides who is worthy. She decides who gets the signal consciously or not that says this person is okay to go with. And in this specific case, now a young actress walked toward a predator because Oprah was on his arm. He was with Naomi Campbell. He had Oprah Winfrey there with him, who entered the room and was swinging off his arm and just seemed like a very dear friend. And these like Oprah, Naomi, Rita, and Georgina, they all sat at his table. And for me, meeting Oprah was like, oh my God. Like I would have thought that I would have to be someone who is established, who everyone would have had to know about before I was privileged enough to meet someone like Oprah. So that gave me so much confidence in him at the time when he approached me. She walked toward Harvey Weinstein because Oprah Winfrey was on his arm. After Weinstein's exposure, Oprah did not retreat. She advanced. She stood at the Golden Globes and gave a speech about believing survivors. She became a face of the Me Too movement. The same woman who had attended his events for decades now positioned herself as the person who was going to fix the problem. Singer Seal responded publicly, posting photos of Oprah and Weinstein together with a caption that described someone who had been part of the problem for decades suddenly being presented as the solution. Oprah never responded. Now, let's talk about John of God. These are entities. They don't have any form. They're just these spirits that enter his body. It's been going on for 40 years. John of God, real name Joanny Shirtafaria, was a Brazilian faith healer. Oprah promoted across multiple episodes of her show. She gave him a global platform. She presented him to her audience as a legitimate healer. Years later, he was exposed as a serial predator who had assaulted dozens of women. He is now serving years in prison. Oprah issued a statement expressing music sadness. Patterns. Children. It happens to adults who are brought into these circles gradually, step by step, until they are too compromised to leave. Tim Ballard described sitting across interrogation tables from people who operated inside these networks. And they're speaking to me about children almost like they're talking about, the weather, or, talking about buying and selling children like you talk about buying and selling computer parts or an automobile or something. And that where I thought something has taken over you. Something non-human has made you less human. Educators, lawyers, law enforcement, clergy, not monsters, people who arrive there through choices. And once you understand that mechanism, once you understand how these networks use complicity as a binding agent, the question about Oprah Winfrey stops being a simple one. Because the question isn't whether she is a monster. The question is whether proximity over decades to people who were made her something she chose not to examine. Tim Ballard has been in this work for over 12 years. But there was the very first image I saw music where there were three little boys that were probably 7, 5, and 3, and they looked like my children. They had blonde eye, blonde hair, blue eyes, and they were being just raped, these 3 little boys by this pedophile. And I was so shocked. I fell to my knees. I dry heaved thinking I was going to throw up into the wastebasket. I jumped into my car. I drove to my children's school, my 3 oldest kids. I checked them out. I still remember in my mind. I can still see dentist appointment. I wrote and I grabbed them. I took them home and just sobbed on the floor. That was his first day. He stayed for 12 years. And when he describes what kept him there through everything he saw, everything he processed, everything he carried home, it comes back to a conversation with his wife. 2 questions she asked him to hold in his mind. Then she says, "Close your eyes. And you're with your maker. You've passed through this life and you're talking to your maker." And he has 2 questions for you. 1, could you have saved the kids? And 2, did you do it? That's your could you have saved them? Did you do it? That question is not only for Tim Ballard. Caviezel has made that explicit at every conference, in every interview, in every venue that will have him. The question is for everyone who now knows what's in the files. Everyone who now knows what investigators have 18:48 minutes, 48 seconds seen. Everyone who now knows what a federal agent gave up his pension, his career, music, and his safety to fight. Jim Caviezel has been saying at conference after conference in front of crowds of people paying attention to the Epstein fallout that something is shifting. He calls it the event. He positions the unsealing of the Epstein documents music not as an ending, but as a trigger. The last domino before a cascade, and I believe it's going to move a lot of whistleblowers come forward, and not one in the hundreds, maybe thousands of them worldwide start coming forward and telling the truth of what's really going on. Hundreds, thousands worldwide. And here is what gives that claim actual structural weight beyond Caviezel's spiritual framing. The dam isn't broken, but it is cracking. Women who were trafficked through Epstein's network are coming forward with legal filings. Associates are being charged. My congresswoman is standing on record reading coded emails and saying publicly that she doesn't understand why anyone talks about beef jerky this way. A film about saving children buried for 5 years by every major studio made $200 million the moment it reached the public. America right now and the world when they see this. They're being reawakened because the media has lied too many times. And this is the strand that broke the camel's back. The strand that broke the camel's back. But here's what Tim Ballard said that may be the most chilling thing in any of this material. It isn't about the evil operating in the shadows. I used to think I might be out of a job because we eradicated human trafficking. I am now thinking I might be out of a job because the very laws that protect children and allow us to go after their captors are being and will be decaying and eroded with this crazy culture that is taking children in the name of liberating them and in fact is enslaving them. Those events are now the subject of federal investigation. Her school in South Africa produced a scandal that was settled out of court with sealed terms, and through all of it the pattern is identical. Proximity, validation, silence, rebrand, philanthropy. Jim Caviezel didn't just music make a movie. He became a target. He got attacked. He got dismissed. I think he got labeled a conspiracy theorist by the same media ecosystem that spent years printing Harvey Weinstein's name on awards season invitations. And when the Epstein documents unsealed, Oprah Winfrey's name was in the music 5 times, and she went quiet. You know what's in the files now. You know what investigators have seen. You know what a federal agent gave up everything to fight. The question Tim Ballard's wife asked him, the one that kept him in the field for 12 years, is the question this video is now asking you. Could you have done something with this information? Did you share this? Research the Epstein documents yourself. They are public record. Support organizations working on the ground. Pay attention to child protection legislation in your state. Music, and the next time someone calls this a conspiracy theory, and ask them why a sitting congresswoman is reading coded emails about beef jerky on the congressional record. Ask them why 85,000 unaccompanied children are unaccounted for. Ask them why a film about saving children was blocked by every major studio for 5 years. The answers are not in the shadows anymore. They're in the files.